HannaTalk. What is up, Pokemon fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk, and I hope you're all fantastic, and hope you all had an amazing Easter as well. And today I am here with a very special guest that I'm welcoming back after almost 8 years and 7 years of doing this channel, which is absolutely crazy. He is a voice actor who is best known to fans in the Pokemon universe as the voice of Drew and various other characters in the Pokemon universe. But he has also played in shows such as Yugioh, One Piece, Shaman King, even making his return to the remake series, and so much more. Please welcome back the amazing Oliver Wyman.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very, very happy to see you again.
Absolutely, same to you as well. How have you been?
I've been okay. It's been, I cannot believe it's been so long.
It certainly has been.
It's been 8 years since I did your show last?
It actually has been about 8 years since I started the channel, so it's been a very long time. I think last time I think we spoke, I think it was back about 7 years ago, so it's been a very long time.
My goodness, it has indeed. Well, I hope you're doing well. I'm okay. Unfortunately not as busy as I would like to be, or as I have been in the past. I think I moved out of the city about 10 or 12 years ago, and although I do still work on a few shows, as you mentioned, I came back for the Shaman King reboot on Netflix, which was a wonderful treat. And I do work with a couple of other production houses doing whatever they have for me, but there really isn't a lot. Unfortunately, I'm on the wrong coast. I think these days most of the anime is done. I know Pokemon is done in California now, which makes me sad. Yeah, I think I'm really on the wrong coast to be doing cartoons, unfortunately. I do a lot of audiobooks, although that quite honestly there hasn't been a lot of that work for me lately either, so I'm doing what I can. And I have to say, I miss performing for people. During the pandemic, I read to my son's school. I read to the 5th grade and the 6th grade at his elementary school, and that was a really wonderful experience. It was so, just hearing applause, just hearing the kids appreciate the voices that I do, and just having an audience really made a difference. So I'm kind of looking into that now. I've been doing trying to get some work in film and maybe even on stage, believe it or not. But yeah, it's been kind of rough. It's been kind of rough. The pandemic. Initially, I did a lot of audiobooks when the pandemic began because all the recording studios were closed. So a lot of people called me, and I had to turn down work. But now, crickets. You know, there's my cricket noise.
That is definitely true, and that actually led into my first question about what has been happening with the virus and especially what's been happening with the virus and the pandemic. Now that we're basically out of the worst of it at this point, especially what's been happening especially on the acting side of things. And it sounds like there's definitely been a fair bit happening, even though like you're on like a part of the city that's like where there's not really much happening at this point, but you never know. It's still the start of the year. We're still it's been 3 years since the pandemic had struck. So just a matter of giving it some time, I guess.
I hope so. I did, I was lucky enough to get to do Shaman King remotely. They recorded me in my booth in my studio here. But I don't live in the city anymore. I live out in the mountains. So I'm only about 2 hours away from the city, about a 2-hour drive. So I think what I'm going to have to do is be in the city during the week, and then be out on the, come home on the weekends to be with my family. But I've got two kids. I've got a 15-year-old daughter and a 12-year-old son, and I don't want to not see them during the week. But a dad's got to do what a dad's got to do to support the family.
Absolutely. I think that's definitely true, and especially for yourself, that you know at this point of where you've got such an incredible career happening, and you're still doing a lot of amazing things as a voice actor, even if it feels like there's very little happening at this point. At least you're still doing what you love to do in this case, and you know the path that you're going down as well, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And as long as you're enjoying it, and as long as you're bringing that passion to it, that's really all that matters at the end of the day, I think.
It's funny. I was putting together my voice acting reel today, and I have so many things to put in there. I think I'm going to make a separate one for anime. I put up if anybody wants to go take a look at the voice acting demo that I put up on my Facebook page. You can take a look at Ollie Wyman, actor and audiobook narrator, on Facebook.
Fantastic.
Some of the things that I've done.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, looking back across at pretty much your entire career, especially speaking on the anime side of things, now, as many people will know, that anime is typically based on manga, which is like the Japanese version of comic books in this case. Have you ever read the manga for any work that you worked on or participated in any way, form?
Sure. As a matter of fact, long before I was a voice actor, I was head of the toy department at a store called Forbidden Planet, which you may be familiar with. I know there's one in London. And we've got one, there's one in the city. Simon, forgive me, where are you located?
I'm actually in Melbourne, Australia, so...
Oh, okay. It's been so long, I've forgotten. Forgive me. And as a voice actor, you'd think I'd be able to place the accent. But anyway, no, it's Forbidden Planet is what they call the science fiction megastore, and I ran the toy department there. I have a collection of toys and comics and a lot of videos that I started collecting when I was working there. I grew up watching Speed Racer and Kimba the White Lion.
Ah, yes.
So I know those from when I was a kid, but then as I got older, I discovered some of the more, I remember discovering Appleseed when I was about 20 years old and thinking, wow, this is great. This is really intense science fiction. I love this. And it was there that I discovered manga and, read it backwards. They read it right to left. But I was really into manga and anime, and then I think, again, I was going over all the old stuff, all my old credits in anime, and I think the first anime I did was Zayram? Zayram.
I think so, yeah.
A long time ago, I played a character called Dr. Toka, which was a very weird because I played an old man, and usually I play the squeaky guys. I play, Manta and all those characters. So it was my first anime was a real departure from what I normally do, and but I was thrilled to be a part. I really was. So I'm quite familiar with anime, and I have, pardon me, I have not here, but out in my studio, I've got all kinds of figures. I try to collect figures for any character that I play, but it's hard to find Aster Phoenix figures. Although last year I went to a Yugioh trading card game tournament, and one of the fans there, I believe his name was Arthur.
Wow.
I didn't get his last name. He was such a nice young man. He gave me my only Aster. Well, I think I have a Aster toy from McDonald's from years ago, but this is my Aster Phoenix keychain. You can see there.
Wow, that is amazing.
One of my prized possessions. I love this because Aster's probably the one character I think that I get that is most widely recognized.
That's fantastic. That is absolutely wonderful. And that actually gets into a whole other bunch of stuff where, like, I remember a couple of interviews I did back during the pandemic and the lockdown, which I obviously did a whole bunch of those interviews during that time, as like a lot of people, because we were stuck up in our homes for so long. But I remember a couple of these interviews that I did with Aaron Roberts, who's a notable anime voice actor, and Amber Lee Connors, again, a really notable anime voice actress, where they both spoke about how much they're huge fans of the manga and they're huge geeks in real life, that it actually influenced their performances from acting standpoints when they got to working on those various projects, having read the manga for projects they would later become part of, which I think was absolutely fantastic. But on the other side of that equation, you've also got actors like Joshua Seth, who I interviewed a few years back from the Digimon universe, where he spoke about this one advice that he got from one voice actor, which was, don't read ahead, just go in there completely surprised.
I have to say I share that philosophy, and I'll let you in on a little secret, Simon. Like I said, I've been doing primarily audiobooks for the last 10 years or so. I don't read the books before I record them. And sometimes, once in a while, I'll find myself, oh, yeah, that character has a French accent. I gotta go back and do his voice. But very, very rarely. And it really does, having that discovery that you are sharing with the listener is really, really kind of makes, that way you're not telegraphing anything. There's no reason to, to foreshadow as an audiobook narrator. There's no reason to let people know. It really helps to create a genuine reaction if you don't know what's coming. Then you really, because I am such a lover of stories. Stories are so important to me. I am always reading. Always. I have Kindle on my phone, and if I got 2 minutes, okay, I can get in a few pages here. I live for stories. They're so important to me, and I am so affected by them. They mean so much to me. So when I'm working on something that has a great story, and I discover the story as I'm creating the voice, as I'm telling the story, really helps inform me and get a genuine reaction from me in the moment.
That's absolutely fantastic.
I have to agree with him. Yeah.
No, that's absolutely wonderful in that regard. Now, going a little bit further into this, now looking back over a lot of the series that you've done in the past, especially in anime and in Western animation, where your character is featured prominently in the series, do you have an idea of where your character is going or the story is going, or was everything recorded out of context?
Generally, I mean, excuse me, they will send me scripts ahead of time, but I don't read them.
Wow.
If there's something I need to know, the director will tell me. And again, there's no need to foreshadow or let people know what's coming. So yeah, generally I see the lines if I'm working remotely. They'll have the video on my computer screen, and I'll just see the words across the bottom, and they're highlighted as they're in time with the flaps for the character. And that's generally the first time I see them. Occasionally, I'll work on something where they, a lot of times actually, working remotely, I have been working on projects where there was show. Ruslan and Ludmilla, I believe. Can't remember. It's a Russian animated feature based. You should know these things. But it was a show where it was a feature film, and we were recording for the animatic. We were not matching flaps. We were recording to a sort of a loosely sketched animated, just like a sketch of what they were going to do, and then they animated to our voices. So for that, they would show us the whole sequence, because we did all of the sound effects and the the efforts and the when people fall. And so rather than normally when I'm doing anime, I'm matching flaps. I see the guy's voice moving, and then I look at the line and I fit it in there. But with these, we would take a whole section of the story, the film, and work on that, and then if we missed something, we would go back and fill it in, and then they would animate to the sound of our voices, which is really much more free. You don't have not married to having to match flaps. I was just watching some Shaman King and seeing how I really have to fit the words into, especially Manta. If you're familiar with him, he does a lot of screaming. His mouth gets really big, so I got to match that. I got to match the energy and the shape of his mouth. So that's a whole different thing.
Absolutely, it's a very different ball game with looking at like voice acting within anime versus like Western animation. It's two completely different sides of the coin, so to speak. But that's just absolutely fantastic, though. Now, I'd like to say, of course, speaking on the Pokemon side of things, that a huge congratulations on Pokemon hitting the final season featuring Ash Ketchum as the main character. What was your reaction to hearing this year's season of Pokemon would be the final season to feature Ash as the main character?
I'm surprised. I mean, I don't know where they're going to go from here. I've always known Ash. I was working on the show back when it was Veronica Taylor as the original Ash, and I know that Sarah has been Ash longer now than Veronica has. So she's really become, most of the young kids watching, she's the voice of Ash now. But I can't imagine Pokemon without Ash. Never mind without Veronica. So.
Nah, that's absolutely true in that regard. I think really the thing to notice about with that is that with Pokemon, typically, obviously, when people got introduced to Pokemon at the time, when I got introduced to it at that time, it was from the anime, and then years later discovered the series of video games, because it actually started as a Nintendo. I think it started as a Nintendo property at the time, and then slowly started expanding into the franchise that it is today. And I will say straight off the bat, for myself as a fan, having been a fan for such a really long time, and Pokemon being really close to my heart, is that Sarah Natacheni has been doing a fantastic job on the series, without a doubt, and I love what they've been doing in the new series, and the original series is still very close to my heart, and I love both versions for completely different reasons. And I will say, straight off the bat, that you and all the original actors across the 4Kids version, you will forever remain important to the legacy that you started with Pokemon, without a doubt.
Thank you, that means a lot. Really.
That's no problem at all. And speaking about with Veronica Taylor, just a bit of trivia for a lot of the fans out there listening. Next week is going to be Supanova Comic Con in Melbourne, Australia. Veronica
That's right, she's going.
She's going to be officially coming to Supanova, and I will officially be there myself. Maybe, fingers crossed, I still haven't got word about it yet, I may officially be doing a panel for my YouTube channel at Supanova.
Oh, I'm looking forward to watching that. Please give Veronica my love. She's like a sister to me.
Absolutely.
In fact, she was the person who I'd done anime before, but I was working on a language program. For a lot of voice actors, that's that was our bread and butter for a long time, doing programs where we would say, "Excuse me, can you tell me how to find the post office?" And people would repeat us saying things like that. And I was working on a session one day, and I met this lovely young woman, and I said, "Oh, you're really great. You must do other voiceover work." And she said, "Yes, I'm Ash on Pokemon." And my jaw dropped, because I've been a video game fan. I actually used to write video game reviews for a magazine called Cream, which was like kind of like Rolling Stone, sort of edgier rock and roll magazine. and I wrote a video game review column called Games Without Frontiers. I was a big Peter Gabriel fan. And at the time, I had Pokemon Blue and Pokemon Red on my Game Boy, like you do. And I was over the moon with the idea of working on Pokemon. I think it was a while before I started working on Pokemon. The first show I did at 4Kids was called Fighting Foodons. I don't know if you remember that. It was kind of like Pokemon, except instead of pocket monsters, it was food, and they had, yeah, it was crazy. So you had
wow.
food fighting food. There was one of the food creatures was called Fried Ricer. I swear, I can't make this stuff up. And I was a bad guy with that. I can't remember his name. Beyond my IMDb page. What, Grell? I want to say. Oh, I don't know. But it was really, at the time we were all just sort of in between takes, laughing at how silly it was. But it was fun. It was a lot of fun. But yeah, that was, and at the same time, I also was a little, maybe a few months later, I met Sam Riegel, who was at the time Donatello on Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then, I don't know if you're a Dungeons & Dragons fan, he is one of the people in Critical Role.
Wow. Yes. Yes. I think when people, I am familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, of course, thanks to Stranger Things, which of course was the show that of course blew up Dungeons and Dragons into the franchise and got people knowing more about Dungeons and Dragons as a franchise, especially since we had the Honor Among Thieves movie just fairly recently with Chris Pine and all that, which actually will go into my next question, but I will get to that in just a bit later. But when you mentioned about the series Critical Role, that reminds me of I think I mistook that for the podcast with Laura Bailey and I think with Travis Willingham, which is a podcast that they do together. Is that the same one?
Yes.
Oh, fantastic.
That's Critical Role. I mean, talk about, I'm a big fan of Dungeons & Dragons, and I was for many years, I would play Blizzard games, World of Warcraft, Hearthstone. So of course, I know those people from their work on those properties, and I'm a big fan.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, speaking about a little bit further on video game adaptations, as we were talking about with the Honor Among Thieves movie, we had the Detective Pikachu movie with Ryan Reynolds a few years back, and there's been word there are going to be several live-action Pokemon series over the next few years. Did you ever get to see the movie yourself, and what's been your opinion on anime and video game properties being adapted for live action?
Well, I will say this. In fact, I'm sure I own what was the name of the Pikachu movie?
Detective Pikachu.
That's right, Detective Pikachu. My son is a big fan. We got that when it came out. As a matter of fact, my son and I just watched the first season of Last of Us, which I never played, so I was, I didn't know the story so much. All I knew was that it was about Joel and Ellie. Ellie happens to be the name of my daughter, so yeah. But it was that I thought was a spectacular. That was a wonderful show. It was really well done. Often shows are, TV shows or films that are made from video game properties very often aren't that great. Pokemon being an exception, although I think Pokemon Game Freak made the game before they made the show, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'm not entirely sure. But I do know sadly, I've never seen the Sonic movie.
Wow.
It was enjoyable. I haven't seen the Sonic movie. I probably would have been more inclined to see it if Big the Cat was in it. But Besides that, I'm trying to think of movies. I have a good feeling about Honor Among Thieves. I think that's gonna be looks great, and I'm a big D&D fan, so give me an owlbear and a beholder, I'm happy. But besides that, I'm trying to think of other. There was the woefully awful Super Mario live movie from years and years ago. That was, and I'm a little. I haven't seen the new Mario movie, so I can't say anything about that. Another video game. Although I will say I want to see them. It's not really a video based on the video game, but the movie on Apple TV about Tetris is something I want to see.
That's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, it's funny that you mentioned about like all these different video game adaptations we've had over the last few years. I think because of the success of Detective Pikachu, which, interesting bit of trivia to the fans out there listening, because as you mentioned with the live-action Super Mario movie back in over 30 years ago, to this day actually, which is absolutely nuts, that was because of that film, for that very reason, that Nintendo had refused to let anybody do a film or TV show based on any of their games, up until Detective Pikachu happened at that time, and then when the Super Mario movie happened, which became the really big tester for Nintendo breaking out into the film and TV universe, which, and from what I've heard about it, all the audience, all the fans absolutely love the Super Mario movie. I'm going to be seeing it this Friday, so I'll be posting my full review on my Facebook page later this week when I officially go to seeing it. But I think because of the fact of the Detective Pikachu franchise, and now with the Sonic the Hedgehog movies officially breaking the video game film curse, and which were amazing, by the way, absolutely fantastic. So I'm definitely looking forward to the other game adaptations they're going to be doing later down the track. It's going to be really, really amazing. Now, if you wanted to do an adaptation of any game you worked on, what would you want that to be?
Most of the games that I've worked on have been based on shows that I've worked on. I did, and I was, as a matter of fact, I was going through my reel today. I was looking at footage from the Warriors video game, based on a video game based on a film. And I don't know. I play a lot of games. I would love to see a Fortnite movie. Never worked on Fortnite. I would have loved to, but I would love to see a Fortnite movie. I would love to see an Overwatch movie. That would be something I would really enjoy. That was a game I played a lot of, and again, I wish that I had the opportunity to work or even audition. I have auditioned for a few Blizzard games. Did audition for Diablo 3. Know that. But besides that, I would love to see an Overwatch movie. I can't think of a game that I've worked on that I would like to see as a film. Because again, all the games I've worked on have been Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games or Pokemon, or I worked on a Grand Theft Auto game once. Apparently, and I've never found myself, but I'm a homeless superhero in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas called Neutron Man. Neutron Man will stop you. That was a long time ago. I haven't even played anything in a while. But Overwatch, because they made a game that has my initials, and then they made a logo that has OW in it, how could I not love this game? And I'm also a huge fan of the voice actors on those games. The guy who does the voice of Reinhardt is phenomenal.
That's fantastic. No, that sounds absolutely wonderful. And this goes into my question to all the fans out there listening is, let me know in the comments below, what do you want to see an Overwatch live action movie or TV show? And leave a like or a comment if you really want to see Oliver Wyman make a Stan Lee cameo in the live action Overwatch film or TV series, or in any of the Sonic the Hedgehog spin-off series, or even Sonic the Hedgehog 3, because that would just be so amazing.
I would dearly love that.
Absolutely.
If you guys can make that happen.
Absolutely. Because if they can manage to get Colleen O'Shaughnessy to come back as Tails the Cat for... Tails the Fox, Tails the Fox for Sonic the Hedgehog 2 and for all the spin-offs, and now Sonic the Hedgehog 3, which will be coming out next year, then anything is possible. Anything is totally possible.
I hope I get the call for Big the Cat.
That would be amazing.
I'm not the only one who's done the voice, but I would love to be Big the Cat again.
That would be absolutely fantastic. Now, speaking about a little bit further on the 4Kids side of things, now, another series that was also part of the 4Kids universe was One Piece. What was it like playing in a series such as One Piece, especially with a series that has lasted as long as it has in the anime world, so to speak?
It's funny. I was just looking at that today. I enjoyed playing Django a lot, and I was really disappointed. I had never seen or heard the actor that they went with for was it Filmation that did the
Funimation, yes.
Funimation, yeah. The voice didn't sound. I mean, Django to me he's a very interesting looking character. So I really tried to create a unique voice that I felt was as unusual as the character's look, and not to denigrate the actor who followed me, but I don't think his voice wasn't unusual. His look is he's a very, very particular looking character and pretty outrageous. So I was kind of surprised when I watched a scene that was dubbed at 4Kids, and I sort of did this when I had this idea that he was like a rock star. He really looked like a rock star to me, and somehow I don't know why I heard or I saw Steven Tyler, who was the lead singer of Aerosmith.
Wow.
So I was trying to get this. It didn't end up sounding anything like that, but I tried to evoke that sort of quality in the voice for Django. And he came out with this sort of he had this weird voice. He talked like this, and it was very gravelly. And maybe it was the wrong choice, but I felt it really fit because he was such a bizarre and outrageous character. And the other guy did really more of a normal human voice, which there's no wrong choices there, but I was surprised that it wasn't a more unusual.
No, that's absolutely fantastic though, and especially when talking about with the 4Kids version versus the Funimation version, which, as many people know, with 4Kids at the time was really heavily edited out a lot of the stuff that made, especially when it came to One Piece, because it's such a really, really intense series, absolutely intense, that they ended up having to edit out a lot of the stuff to make it fit to younger audiences. But at the same time, they end up removing a lot of the stuff that would have been important to future storylines when it came down to the second half of the series at this point. So I did enjoy the 4Kids version for what it was back then at the time, and I thought you and all the other actors did an amazing job in the series. And the Funimation version is still, honestly, in my opinion, and I posted a review about this a long, long time ago, it is one of the best anime released in a very long time. One Piece is still right up there at the very top. Probably, for me, in my opinion, in my top 3 anime with Dragon Ball and Pokemon. So, very, very, very big right there.
Those are your top 3? Dragon Ball, Pokemon,
and One Piece. Yes. Those 3 being
One Punch Man isn't up there?
One Punch Man, I'd say I'm still going to have to work out my list just a little bit because I'm still watching a whole bunch of other anime though. But it could change a little bit here and there. But those 3 in particular, still being at the top of my list though, without a doubt. But but on the other side of the 4Kids equation, you've also got series like Pokemon and Yugioh, for example, which with the Yugioh series, if you ever watched the Japanese version of the original Yugioh series, or even read the manga for that, it's actually very intense and a really dark series that I was like, wow. I actually watched through clips from the Japanese version of the Yugioh series, and I was like, wow, I'm actually glad in a way they really edited that down a little bit for the 4Kids version. It was still very dark for what it was back with the original Yu-Gi-Oh series, especially Yu-Gi-Oh GX and all that kind of stuff. But the Japanese version, it was like, wow, that's intense.
I remember with Shaman King, they did a lot. They censored a lot. They changed things for Shaman King. There was an episode where Morty, or Manta, it was Morty in the 4Kids version. Morty was literally crucified. They had put him on a cross-shaped tombstone, and that did not fly with the lawyers that oversee these things. And they said, "Oh no, that is no. You cannot show that to children on Saturday morning." So they just took the tombstone and filled it in. It wasn't a cross shape. It was just, but he was still,
Yeah.
crucified. So it was a little. That was pretty intense. And I don't know if you ever watched that episode or that show, but there is another scene where there's gosh, I cannot remember that guy's name. Was it Lysert? No, it wasn't Lysert. But one of the guys, the bad guy, was performing surgery on Manta, which was kind of terrifying. And in the Japanese, you could see there was, not a lot, but there was a little spatter of blood, which would definitely not fly on 4Kids or in most American markets. Sure.
I mean, I can totally understand from like the 4Kids as a company was them trying to market it across to like children, like to younger audiences at that time. But on the other side of that equation, you've also got Funimation as well, which was trying to get it across to general audiences at that time, even to older audiences for that matter. Now, which going into One Piece, you spoke about seeing the clips from the Funimation version. Did you ever get to watch the full Funimation version of the series or meet any of the actors from the series?
I did not. They record out of Texas, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, yes.
Because I know Sean Schemmel worked for them for many, many years. He's from Texas. He I can't remember. How many years did he do Dragon Ball? Have you had Sean? Have you ever had Sean on your?
I haven't. I would love to have Sean Schmall on my channel, but I did get to meet him a long, long time ago. In 2014 or 2015, I believe it was, at the second comic convention that I went to, which was just before the first Comic-Con that I ever went to, which was Supanova, where I got to meet both Veronica Taylor and Eric Stewart at that very same convention. So it's been nearly 10 years since my first comic convention, which is absolutely crazy, but I would love to have Sean Schmall on the channel. That would be absolutely fantastic. But I know he's been doing Dragon Ball for such a really long time, and he's still involved in the Dragon Ball franchise to this day forward. Now that they're fully getting into the later iterations of the series, they're getting back into doing the movies again, even expanding into the side characters and not really featuring his character as, well, not really trying to focus on the main character quite as much, sort of going back a little bit to the original Dragon Ball era, where it got to focus on the other side characters as well. That's what I've noticed anyway, and that's what they're at least trying to go back to with the Dragon Ball universe, is trying to go back to its roots, so to speak.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's cool. Honestly, I wish if you ever are in touch with any of the people who run the conventions in Australia, tell them I would be more than happy. They're willing to fly me out to Australia.
Absolutely.
I would be more than happy to take the day-long flight.
Absolutely.
And come visit. It would be great to meet you in person, Simon. That would be wonderful.
It would be, and I would feel the same as well. That would be absolutely fantastic. And now the conventions are slowly starting to come back into the mix, the last convention that I went to, just to get into a bit of a story here, the last convention I went to was 2 years ago at Supanova when they were officially bringing it back into Australia at the time. But that was when Australia was going in that whole back and forth between going in and out of lockdowns at the time. So it was going. So I can definitely say without a doubt, with what Australia had to go through versus the rest of the world, we weren't struck in terms of the worst from the virus, but we were struck the worst in terms of the restrictions and everything, just because of that whole constant back and forth at the time. But that was the last convention that I went to at Supanova 2 years ago, and I got to meet Spike Spencer from Neon Genesis Evangelion, and I interviewed him in 2020, and he was actually living in Australia at that time, which was absolutely crazy. But now the conventions are slowly starting to get back on track, and we're slowly getting back into normality, so to speak. It would be absolutely fantastic to have you in Australia, and we're getting Supanova next year without a doubt. So I will definitely do everything in my power to get you down to Australia, because that would be amazing.
That would be great. Let them know I'm more than willing.
Absolutely.
I would love to visit Australia.
Absolutely. Now, speaking about a little bit further on the Shaman King series, you starred in the Shaman King series, both the original and the reboot series. What was it like, especially coming back into the reboot?
Oh, that was fun. Although I will say again, I missed the old show. I didn't really change much of anything for my performance that I can think of. The director didn't. They were. The Hermes was the director. He was a really nice fella. He was very, very. He let me do. He basically asked me how I wanted to do it and if I was happy with what I had done each time. So I was very grateful for that. I wasn't happy about the fact that they didn't cast Sean, because I thought he was one of the best parts of the show. Ryo, or as he's known in the original anime, Ryu he made that character so funny. He made that character so funny because there was, and this is one of the things that Sean excels at. He looked at the character as I did, and we both went, this guy's like an Elvis impersonator. This guy has he's got the big hair, and so he created this character that had this weird sort of almost Elvis tone to him, but at the same time he was over the top and insane in the way that Sean can be. And it was I would stick around for his sessions because he would crack me up, and I loved his voice for Amita Maru. So I was very disappointed that they didn't cast Sean for that. Other than that, I enjoyed it. It's a very dark show and has a lot of stuff that's while it could be considered a kid's show, there's a lot of jokes in there that are definitely going over the kids' heads. But I was thrilled to be a part of that. I really was. It meant a lot that they asked me to come back. There weren't many. I know Tara Sands came back for that. A few other actors, but it was a real treat. It made me very happy to know that people, I know back in the day there were some fans out there who did not like my take on Manta, or back then he was Morty, and I played him very comically. I tried to anyway, and I think the original anime voice, the Japanese voice, was much more childlike and much less. I was watching a lot of these clips today as I was putting together my reel, and I was kind of surprised at the dynamic in Manta's tone. Because he'd be like this, he'd be really, and then sometimes he would get down there if he was really mad, and I'd forgotten that he had that range, but it was, I always tried to match the emotion and the face, because he has he screams a lot. He screams a lot. I had to tell them, I can't do more than an hour session for Manta because by the end of the session I'd sound like this. But he was a great character. Again, when you have a character who's that dynamic, who has that much range of emotion and feeling, it's a challenge, but it's more fun. It was a real treat. And I'm so very grateful to the people at Netflix for recasting me as Manta.
Absolutely.
You got any more anime? Please send it my way.
Absolutely, that would be absolutely fantastic. And that's actually a really big thing about what's happening at the moment, because Netflix is really going heavily on the anime side of things. Specifically, them starting to do, especially with doing a lot of live action adaptations of really popular anime. With this year in particular, we're supposed to be getting a live action One Piece series, which I think is supposed to be coming out later this year, with the original creator of the manga fully involved in the series for this one. Now, that I know gets into the whole idea of anime adaptations, because there have been some. It really just depends a little bit on which ones you're looking for, I guess, because when it comes to live action adaptations in Japan, those ones are absolutely nailed as far as I'm concerned. But when it comes to stuff that they're trying to do here in the States, or in anywhere outside of Japan for that matter, some of it has been okay. Others have been, hopefully I'm not going to get pitchforks thrown at me for saying this, disastrous. And just a really good mention of the fact is like Dragon Ball Evolution and like that sort of thing. But no, I definitely, if they can manage to finally break the video game film curse with all the films we've had over the last 3 years, then here's to hoping that the anime adaptation is finally going to be broken once and for all, I think, because that would be fantastic. And of course, as I mentioned about before, with Netflix being involved with a lot of anime properties and all that kind of stuff, what's been your opinion on anime, just anime in general, like being rebooted? Because we've had so much anime reboots over the last few years.
I'm all for it, especially if it means more work for me. But I do think, as I said, my son enjoys anime, and so I do watch with him at times. But stories are very important. Like I said, stories are very important to me. Stories should be central, and without naming any names, I don't want to criticize any animes, but I find that some of the newer shows that I have seen are less about story and more about spectacle, more about style than substance. So I think story is important, and then you put your style on top of that, rather than have something that's just outrageous and then then there's a story too. That's a matter of opinion, but it's also, I think, a story is central to any medium. And if you don't have a good story, again, there's nothing, I can't think of anything in particular that I don't think has a good story, but I want to have, again, to me, characters and story are the most important thing, and I don't find that a lot of anime are really character-driven or story-driven. There'll be a shtick, and then they do the shtick. Again, I have my thing. I do love comic books. I'm a big Marvel and DC fan. More of a DC fan when it comes to comic books. More of a Marvel fan when it comes to movies. But superheroes are my thing. I wasn't crazy about what's the name? Superhero School. What's the anime?
Man. I'm trying to think of off the top of my head, basically. I know there has been like several anime based on...
It's something really popular, and everyone who's watching this is thinking, oh my my God, Oliver Wyman is a moron. How can he not remember the name of... If my son were home, he would be like, Dad, you're a bonehead. It's... I've got too many things in my head. I've got too many other cartoons and comic books in my head. But yeah, I wasn't enthralled by the story. For instance, Last of Us, that's a great story. That's a great story. It's multi-layered, and the characters are amazing, and the development and the reveals. That's a great story. If it's a good story, you know, it doesn't matter. But I read a lot. I read a lot of historical fiction. I read a lot of comic books. But if there's no story, I'm not interested. So I think when you get something, a lot of times when you get a property that doesn't have much of a story, and then you make it into a movie, and they don't really have much to go with, and it's near, you know, yeah, there really isn't too much you can do.
No, that's definitely true in that regard. And I think, really looking back, a lot of the anime that's been rebooted over the last few years, we've definitely had some really successful reboots, for that matter. Like, the best examples I can give off is like Fruits Basket, when it started back in the early 2000s, and it had Laura Bailey, Jerry Jewell, Eric Vale, all those cast of actors in that original series. But it was a very comedic series. It was really heavy on the comedic side of things. And then cut to 4 years ago, where they had the reboot series back in 2019, and they brought back most of the original cast members for that series. And for me personally, it was one of the best reboots of any anime series in a very long time, because it kept it true to the original version of the manga, which in the manga and the original story, it's way darker. It's a very dark series, but it still has those comedic overtones thrown in there. But on the other side of that equation, you've also got the Digimon series, which had the list of movies they did over the last few years, and then recently, I think it was a couple of years back, decided to reboot the original Digimon Adventure series, even though they brought back most of the original cast members for that one. I heard that it wasn't as well received compared to the original one, though.
Was Digimon anime? I thought Digimon was an American property.
Digimon, I guess you would consider to be an anime in that regard, but yes, it basically obviously gets into the whole discussion about like Pokemon versus Digimon argument in that sense. But no, Digimon was definitely an anime property, at least to me in my eyes anyway. But yeah, so there have been successful reboots, and there have been some not so successful reboots. So I understand totally where that's coming from. And especially with regards to anime now versus as it was back then, is that most creators, especially when it comes to manga, tend to write like stories that only last for about one chapter and then just leave it at that. They don't want to expand it out into big franchises and stuff. They prefer to do, let's just do just one project and that's it, and let's just move straight ahead to the next one. And I get that. I totally understand that and everything. But you still have those franchises that are still going incredibly strong. They'll keep going until the end of time and build out to God knows what exactly. If they decide with the Shaman King reboot, let's do a spin-off series, let's do it. That would be amazing. That would be absolutely fantastic.
Mata needs his own series.
Absolutely. Now, moving into another popular anime series, and popular series that we've been talking about, is Yugioh. Now, obviously we've been having several Yugioh series over the last few years, but we also had the Dark Side of Dimensions movie, which was set after the events of the original series. If there was the chance for a revival series on whether the original series, or even Yu-Gi-Oh! GX for that matter, would you be open to coming back? And if you wanted to do a spin-off series on Asta Phoenix, would you be up for it?
Oh, are you kidding? In a minute, in a second, I would be there. I have to say, last year I went to Chicago. Did I go to Chicago? Where did I go? Yes, I went to Chicago for a Yu-Gi-Oh! Trading card duel championship. And the fans, I can't tell you. I was there with can't remember the names of any of the characters. I remember the names of the characters I play. I can't remember the names of any of the other characters. there with one of the original, the main guy from GX. Oh, Jaden. Duh. Jaden. So I was there with Jaden, and we were overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and appreciation from the fans. It means so much to me, to us, to all of us as voice actors. It means so much to hear that you guys appreciate what we do, because we're in the booth, we don't get to hear applause. That's the curse of being a voice actor. You're a performer who never gets to hear applause. So when we meet people who let us know that they really appreciate what we do, it means the world to us. So I was the Yugioh fans, some of the best people in the world. I saw so many people who contacted me on Instagram afterwards and said it meant so much to me that you took the time to talk to me, and I'm happy to talk to anybody about this. I love doing it, and I'm so grateful for the appreciation and the adoration of the fans. It makes me, it feeds my soul.
Absolutely.
Being a voice actor being an actor who never gets to hear applause is kind of a curse. You know, I want to know, is anybody listening? Was that okay? I know that there are some of the best film actors in the world. I know this for a fact. Jeff Bridges and John Goodman. The two of them, they are some of the best. They're two of the best actors ever in the history of film. They're both really insecure about their work. Jeff Bridges, after he does a shot, he'll go around to everybody on the set and go, "Was that good? Did you think that was okay? Did that feel real to you?" And that's astonishing to me, because he's a master. And John Goodman, another one, one of my favorite actors, one of the best character actors ever. So I get that if you're working on a film, the crew is the only people there that are there to applaud for you, and they're doing their job. So it means a lot. And when the Yugioh fans told us how much they loved meeting us and just being able to talk to us, it made my heart soar. I was over the moon, and because of that, Yugioh has a very special place in my heart. So,
that's fantastic.
Fans, thank you.
And it has a special place in the heart of many of us fans out there. And I can just safely say this, is that if honestly I turned HannaTalk into a variety show at some point down the track, and you were one of the guest stars on there, and you gave off a speech on that sort of level, I'd guarantee you there'd probably be a standing ovation in the audience right now, because that would be fantastic.
I would love that, Simon. I actually have an idea, something that I would love to see happen. We have all of these reality TV shows. I'm sure you guys have Big Brother in Australia, right? Or something like it.
We used to have Big Brother back in the day, and it actually recently had made a revival and stuff over the last couple of years.
Really?
So yeah, they recently just brought it back and everything.
What I think we should do is we should have a show like Big Brother, only instead of just people, we fill the house with voice actors.
That would be fantastic. That would be really amazing.
That would be a great show, and I know, put Sean Schemmel in there, put Jim Conroy, put Eric Stewart, Veronica Taylor, get the bunch of us together in a house, and if you get me and Wayne Grayson, the two of us would just be doing Christopher Walken the whole time, which would be entertaining in and of itself. But I love the people I work with, and as you mentioned, a lot of them are geeks like me. I love comic books and video games. I love superhero movies. It's amazing to me that I have not seen. Not only have I not seen Dungeons & Dragons: Honor Amongst Thieves, I still haven't seen Quantumania, which is crazy because I'm a big, huge Marvel fan. It's coming out, I think, next week on Disney. But the fact that I haven't seen that yet, that's unusual.
Wow. Nah, that's not unusual at all, I think, in that regard, because, I mean, I had the chance to see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania myself just the month that it came out, and it was an amazing movie. And I know for a fact, especially for myself as a huge DC and Marvel comic book fan, even though I only got into the comics just back in 4 years ago, I think, most of that time came from the animated stuff, from like Justice League, Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, and Superman, and a lot of the DC and Marvel animated stuff, even from the live action movies as well, was my beginning to all of that. And I slowly but surely started knowing about the comics at that time. I can say without a doubt that Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania was an amazing movie, and I know that people have had their complaints against the last couple of years of Marvel films, from the movies and the TV shows during Phase 4. Here's the thing, and I'm planning to post a video about this on my channel at some point, just to give off a full opinion about it. I will say that Marvel Phase 4 was always intended to be the experimental phase. It was always meant to be them trying out new ideas. And I will say this to the listeners out there, especially to the so-called Marvel fans out there, you don't have to watch everything. If you want to just stick with the movies and not worry about the TV shows, that's great. If you want to watch everything, that's fine too.
Yes, indeed. My son and I are now watching Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is the only, besides Quantumania, the only Marvel, the MCU media that I haven't seen yet. So I'm looking forward to watching that. We watched the first episode, and then once Quantumania comes out, but the thing that I'm not going to miss is Guardians of the Galaxy 3. That Rocket means a lot to me, and James Gunn is one of my very favorite filmmakers, so I'm really, really, really looking forward.
That's absolutely fantastic. And of course, I've got a question here just with regards to James Gunn, but we'll get to that in just a moment later. But as mentioned about before, with working in the comic book universe, one of the properties that you worked on specifically was an audiobook on Loki Where Mischief Lies. What was it like having to work on a book like that, especially being a huge fan in that regard, being able to do a project on that sort of level?
I'm so glad you asked about that, Simon. That was a real treat. I was absolutely delighted to be picked to read that book. I am a huge fan of Loki. I'm a big Thor fan in general. My Mjolnir's in the studio. I wish I'd known. I would have had it out. I have a replica of Mjolnir and Cap's shield out in my studio. But I am a huge fan. I think there might be a YouTube video about that where I go to my studio and you can see me weave my Mjolnir around. That was just a delight. It's a wonderful book, and it's a wonderful insight into the character. I can't recommend it highly enough. I was trying not to do an impression of Tom Hiddleston, but he might have bled into my voice at times because he's so wonderful, and he really is. Of all, he's one of the. They do great casting for the MCU, but that was possibly the most brilliant casting ever, because he looks and is just he's Loki. He is Loki. He's more Loki than Loki in the comics. So yeah, it meant a lot to me, and I'm very, very grateful that you asked about that. That was I actually won an award for that. And that's got framed on the wall in my studio because I was so happy, just so happy to get to do that.
That's absolutely fantastic. No, that's absolutely wonderful. And it's funny that you were mentioning about trying not to have Tom Hiddleston's version of Loki involved in influencing your performance. This actually reminds me of a story of an interview that I did with Richard Epcar, who many people will remember from the Ghost in the Shell standalone complex series, and he was the voice of the Joker in the Injustice games. He spoke about how he had not listened to he'd never heard Mark Hamill's version of the Joker, and he said he doesn't want to because he doesn't want that to influence his performance. So, which is absolutely I was very surprised about that, because every other actor that has done the Joker at some point or another has been influenced by Mark Hamill's version of the Joker, just because of what he brought to that character.
He was the best. Sorry, I mean, no offense to the other guy, but I've been a comic book fan all my life, when I read a comic book, or when I read a book, I hear the voices in my head. So when I'm doing a voice, I'm trying to I'm doing a performance trying to replicate what I hear in my head. What I always heard in my head, years before I ever heard Mark Hamill do it, was that voice.
Wow.
That is exactly the voice. And so I was asked once to audition for an Alexa game, an Alexa Batman game, and they wanted me to do, and they asked me to do a Mark Hamill voice, and I was like, I wouldn't do it any other way, because that's the voice of the Joker. I will say, though, one of the biggest disappointments of my life was the horrible, horrible animated version of The Killing Joke, which is possibly my favorite comic book of all time. And Mark Hamill did a good job, but they changed the script and they changed the story and they made it an affront to any Batman fan worth his salt, if you ask me. But that's a topic for a whole nother podcast. But before I'm gonna have to get going, Simon. But I know you did have one question about.
Yes. Now, obviously, with regards to like James Gunn being the head of DC Studios, and especially with Marvel now officially getting the X-Men and the Fantastic Four into the MCU at some point, are there any particular characters or storylines that you would like to see adapted for live action or the animated universe?
That's a good question. I would like to see a live Killing Joke. I would like to see that. I would like to see The Dark Knight Returns, the Frank Miller series. I'm looking forward to the Swamp Thing movie. That's going to be amazing, because that's one of my favorite comic books. I read a lot of comic books, largely. I would pick comics written by the writers that I love: Alan Moore, Frank Miller, anything they did, Grant Morrison, anything they write, I would buy. And all of their titles, Animal Man, that's something I would love to see as a live action. I think there might be a plan for that. I'm not sure. James Gunn's The Suicide Squad might be my favorite movie of all time. I love that movie so much, I can't tell you. I've seen it at least a dozen times, and it is great. And James Gunn is such a great filmmaker. He makes us laugh, he makes us cringe, he makes us cry. And, I'm a guy, Marvel movies, yeah, I cried 3 or 4 times in Endgame. Who didn't? But I will say this. I know that Guardians of the Galaxy 3, I'm not going to be able to see it with my children because they're going to be embarrassed. I'm going to be bawling. I'm going to be crying like a grandmother at a wedding because I get Rocket and I know where he's going with this.
That's fantastic.
It just teared me up just thinking about it. So I am so looking forward to that. James Gunn, when they made him the head of the DC cinematic universe, that made me happier than you could possibly imagine.
I can imagine
one of
that.
my favorite people.
Absolutely. And here's to hoping that in the animated side of things, that you officially get to be part of the DC universe, because that would be absolutely fantastic.
From your mouth to God's ears, as they say, Simon. From your mouth to God's ears.
Absolutely. Oliver Wyman, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to have you back on board.
Thank you. It's been an honor to be here. I really appreciate it, Simon.
That's absolutely no problem at all. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for appreciating what we do, and thank you for applauding, even if we don't get to hear it. It means the world to me.
That's absolutely fantastic.
I hear my wife telling me I got to go pick up my son now. So Simon, you have a great week, and I hope I'll see you again. I hope I get to see you in person in Australia soon.
That would be absolutely fantastic. Absolutely. Well, guys, if you'd like to find out more about Oliver Wyman, you can check out the links which I'll put to you in the description below. Don't forget to catch him on the new Shaman King series. And don't forget to like, subscribe, click that bell, check out the links, and comment below for anything you want me to do on the channel or Facebook page. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Oliver Wyman signing off. Bye for now.